And I find myself eating with pigs, and I wake up and I'm eating with pigs, and I think and I remember my father. I remember the great, beautiful rolling hills, the great mansion, the generosity, all the people that work for him. And I think maybe I can go back, and maybe he will take me in as a day laborer because I'm not worthy to be his daughter, but maybe I can work for him. This will be better than eating with pigs. And this is me as I decide to go to AA.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Tally-ho, chaps and chapettes. That was the voice of Ms. Julia K. that you heard at the beginning of this episode. She is from Berlin, Germany, and she is on this episode number 172 of Sober Speak, and you are going to hear so much more from her in just a moment. But, by the way, before I get into first things first, tally-ho is a word that my friend Barry from across the pond signs off on with some of his emails sometimes. And so I thought I just like the word. I don't really think it even applies here to a greeting on an episode. I think it has something to do with foxes and fox hunts and stuff like that, like I said, and it could be more of a sign-off as opposed to a greeting. But as usual, I digress. I just wanted to use the word. Forgive me. First things first. This episode is brought to you by Kim and Bill and Todd and Terry and Kurt and Mark and Nomadic Nymph. I just read them, folks. Anyway, do you know what Kim and Bill and Todd and Terry and Kurt and Mark and Nomadic Nymph did? Well, they went to our website, soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little PayPal tab, and they made a contribution. Thank you so much, Kim and Bill and Todd and Terry and Kurt and Mark and Nomadic Nymph. This episode is coming right out to you. I, John M., will be the chairperson for this meeting between meetings, and I do point this out every once in a while. Have you ever noticed that I am always the chairperson for this meeting between meetings? Maybe someday we'll get another chairperson in here. I don't know. And I have thought before, if I croak accidentally, I don't know if there's anybody who would know how to come in here and do this and, kind of take it over or, I don't know, even just come on here and say, hey, listen, we're going to have no more episodes from John M. because he just croaked. Something like that. I hope you would be sad for a day or two, but then, as usual, you would go on with your life. But nonetheless, I digress one more time. John M. will be the chairperson for this meeting between meetings, and I am truly honored and privileged to serve all of you listening in. So take a seat, if you will, around this virtual table, and let's get started. Consider this podcast, if you will, a non-social distancing podcast. In other words, we do not expect you, when listening to our episodes, to stand 6 feet apart from us. You can get those earbuds right up next to your ears and listen on in. So we are the COVID-friendly podcast. Is that such a thing? I have no idea what I'm talking about. But as a side note, I want to also point this out. Keep in mind that you do not, and this is on a serious note, you do not have to social distance from your higher power. As it says in the big book, we drew near to him and he disclosed himself to us. And I may be a word or two off on that. I'm not looking at my book right now, but let me say that again. We drew near to him, our higher power, and he disclosed himself to us. That's in the big book. So wherever you are today, I pray that you can take time to pause and draw near to him. Maybe now's the time. Maybe you pause this episode, draw near to him. Anyway, that was just on my mind, and I felt like sharing that. So what's going on in your world, John M? Well, I'm glad you asked there, Sober Speak listener. So I was thinking about this. Tonight, I'm going to, in fact, he doesn't even know this yet, but I'm going to take my son out for a little bit of alone time. He could come in while I'm recording this and we may have a discussion about it. But nonetheless, I'm going to take him out for a little one-on-one time. And one of the places that he likes is Shake Shack. And it made me think about this. We had his birthday a couple weeks ago and we went down to Shake Shack and we got him his favorite meal. He likes to get a bacon cheeseburger, a couple of them, some fries, and then they have a shake there where you, I forget what it's called, but they mix both chocolate and vanilla. I think they call it a black and white shake or something like that. But nonetheless, he likes all that stuff. And we got it back home and we were about to sit down and have a family birthday. And moi decided, you know what? I don't want to put this on paper plates and I don't want to put it on anything. You know what we're going to do? We are going to grab, or I am going to grab, the finest china that we have in the house. We usually reserve this for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I thought, what better occasion would there be than for us to whip out the finest china we have in the home and eat on my son's birthday. So we got the china out. And by the way, the reason we don't like to use the china usually is because you can't put it in the dishwasher, right? You got to wash it by hand. But we went ahead. I got it out. We put our little burgers and fries and ketchup and all that stuff on the plates, and we ate it and we just enjoyed our meal together. So anyway, I don't know why. I just wanted to share that. I think it'll be a memory that lasts in our family history, and I don't think that's the last time I'm going to do that. And Ma, volunteered, and I don't like to do this, by the way. I volunteered to wash all those dishes by hand. It was worth it for my son, right? You know what I'm saying. Here's a little bit of listener feedback that I wanted to put on the front end of this because believe me, we're going to have plenty of listener feedback on the back end. So nonetheless, Trudy writes in. She says, "Hello, John. My name is Trudy. Trudy. You know how you have the Cary Grant impersonations, but nonetheless, my name is Trudy, and I just wanted to say how much I enjoy your podcast. I found your podcast about a year ago. I just celebrated my 2 years on December 30th. Well, congratulations to you, Trudy. That is absolutely fantastic." She says, "My home group is the Circle of Hope group in Fruit Heights, Utah. This is just north of Salt Lake City." Well, I didn't even know they had alcoholics in Utah. She says, "I have a sponsor that is just about to celebrate her 40 years of sobriety in AA. Well, congratulations to you and your sponsor, Trudy. She says, I absolutely love the program of AA. I have had the blessing of being able to sponsor other women. And then she's got a big heart emoji. She says, your guests, John, are so interesting, have great experience, strength, and hope to share. Don't ever lose your giggle. I guess, I think some other people would argue with you on that or disagree with you on that. But anyway, and your bilingual skills. Well, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me there, Miss Trudy. She says, I am an Irish Catholic girl, so alcoholism came easy to me. Also, I would love to be added to your SSFBG, super secret Facebook group. Thank you for your service, Trudy F. Well, I'm sure you know this, Trudy. I got you out the invite to that group, and we look forward to having you as part of that. And by the way, if you are listening to this, maybe for the first time, and you think to yourself, how in the heck would moi get into that super secret Facebook group Trudy references there? Well, let me fill you in here. What you would do is you would send me your email that is associated with Ewan's Facebook account. You would send that email to John, John, at soberspeak.com, and moi will get you a invite out. We love having new people in there. I'm going to announce this one more time, but if you're in the super secret Facebook group, you will notice we actually have it pinned to the top of the as an announcement. There is somebody who's been on the program before. When I say on the program, she recorded an episode with me. Her name is Megan P. She has a free recovery yoga class that she puts on via Zoom on Sunday night from 4 o'clock p.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Central. And this is open to, you don't have to be a member of AA. It's open to anyone struggling with addiction or any kind of affected, or if they're affected by addiction. So you can come in, anybody can join that. And what it is, and I said this incorrectly last week, it's a half meeting on the front end, but it's not an AA meeting. It's a recovery meeting, right? With a general topic, people share. If you've never been to a meeting before, you can kind of come in and see how that rolls. I come to it on a consistent basis. So you have a half meeting. Then on the second half of the meeting, on the back half, Megan or somebody else does a little yoga and meditation time. And like I said, it's free. It's open to anybody. But if you're in the super secret Facebook group, the Zoom information and the password and all that stuff is in there. If you're not in there, if you're not on Facebook and you still want the information, just email me at john@soberspeak.com and I will get you that information out. All right. Now on to our main event. This is Miss Julia K from Berlin, Germany. You folks are going to absolutely eat this up. I had no idea what to expect when I interviewed her. I love her Julia's enthusiasm for life and for Alcoholics Anonymous, her great energy. I love that she learned to speak English in Alcoholics Anonymous. And Julia is kind of like you know how we have Joe, well, many of you are going to know the name here, Joe and Charlie in the United States and what they've done with the Big Book Comes Alive and all that kind of stuff. What Julia is a version, if you will, of Joe and Charlie in Berlin, in Germany. And she does absolutely a fantastic job. We talk about her being a single mom in AA, anorexia. We talk about sleeping disorders, Valium, diet pills, depression, bulimia, family, a priest she met on the plane, and much more. And if that's not enough, Julia explains what she means by the term, quote, more slut, unquote. You'll have to stay tuned. That's toward the end of the episode. All right, everybody, really on this one, buckle up your seats. Buckle up in your seats. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. And we will, believe me, we have plenty. Oh, if you like listener feedback, you're going to love the end of this episode. We've got a ton of it. Anyway, enjoy Julia Kay, and I'll speak to you a little bit more on the back end of this. Okay, everybody. So today we are very fortunate to be sitting here with Miss Julia Kay. And I can see you laughing, Julia. I've heard you give a talk before, and I know you have a heck of an enthusiasm for this program, and you had the biggest, brightest smile. So good to see. So, Julia, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself if you would, and give your sobriety date if you will, and also tell people where you are sitting at this moment in time.
Yes, with great pleasure. Hello, John, and hello, world. My name is Julia, and I'm an alcoholic from Berlin, Germany. And my sobriety date is September 23rd, 1985, meaning that I have 35 years of continued sobriety, nothing from the head up, nothing. And and I've been a super enthusiastic AA ever since. I got sober when I was 20. I'm now 55, and AA is God got me sober so I can stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And this is what's happening in my life, one day at a time. It's getting better and bigger as time passes, and all the promises keep coming keep how to say, they come true, they get, is that what you say? Yes. So I'm here, and I got sober in Paris in the English speaking fellowship. It was a very good little working group back then, still the same group today. A typical expat group that welcomed me, little French German girl. I went to AA to learn English. That was my goal. I wasn't an alcoholic. Nobody can possibly be an alcoholic with 20. And and the French lady at the Rue Frédéric Sauton at the French central office was very kind to me. And I said, I want to go to AA because my father's an alcoholic. And she said, yes. And I said, I'm not an alcoholic. And she said, yes. And I said, I want to go to English speaking meetings because I want to learn English. And she said, yes. She was wonderful. She was very old, and she's probably as old as I am now, but in my eyes, she was super old. But she was very kind, as we in Alcoholics Anonymous are, and she spoke the language of the heart. And this is us. We speak the language of the heart, that an old little lady can have the love for little young puppy like I was, a girl that barely had threads of her soul left, that enters a room, and she never judged me. And if she did, she hid it very well, but I don't think she did. And she never had an opinion on me. Her only thing was this girl is here for a reason, and I'm going to get her to where she needs to go. And so she was one of my many, many little angels that loved me into life. And I went to Cathédrale Notre-Dame, which was across the River Seine. And I sat in the little garden from the cathedral, and she had given me English-speaking pamphlets, which I thought was very nice of her, and an English-speaking meeting list. And which was good, because I'll come back to the local language later, to this very, very difficult issue, and also very hopeful issue. But I read the pamphlets, and they had a way of speaking to me that went directly to my heart. And nobody had talked to me in writing. Nobody had talked to me like this ever. And I read this, I said, I thought to myself, this must be these crazy Americans. And then I took the test, because there was a test. And since I wasn't an alcoholic, I was not afraid of the test. And I was easy to be honest, because I was certainly not going to score alcoholism with 20 as talented and as brilliant and as sexy. I didn't think I was beautiful, but at least I could be sexy as I thought of myself to be. And so I was honest. And to my great surprise, I scored incredibly well. And it said, if you answered yes to more than 3 questions, the threshold is very low. So if you answer yes to more than 3 questions, there are great chances that you are an alcoholic and you should go to a meeting. And this was the first suggestion that I followed, because it said I could go to meeting, and I was crying in that garden, very dramatic, behind the Notre Dame church, the big Victor Hugo church, and where the hunchback lived. And I said, okay, I'm an alcoholic. I have a ticket. And I went with that ticket a lot because I was convinced that you guys were going to tell me, you're not an alcoholic, not possibly. You're so young and you're so sexy and you're so talented. You couldn't possibly be an alcoholic. But I had my ticket. And I understood the traditions really fast. I understood that you couldn't throw me out. I knew that. I understood because I read the traditions, and I understood. The traditions are so important for the newcomer. So I got So that was a long-winded introduction, and now I let you interrupt me magnanimously.
I appreciate that. So you actually did learn? Did you learn to speak English in Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yes, I learned English at school. The school English. I was a very good English speaker when I was drunk. We're awesome when we're drinking, and I love to speak foreign languages when drinking. And I was very good at speaking English. I remember there was a family reunion of mine with a huge family, and we had big family reunions in castles in Germany because one of the uncles was quite rich. So we would have this big castle, and I remember coming back from a trip, and I had read Time magazine because I'm such a good English speaking person, and there was a Time magazine issue on herpes, and I'd read the whole issue. And I remember that the whole night there were like 90 people. I have a loud voice. I'm an actress. And I was a 14, 15-year-old kid. And the whole night I explained to the whole company what herpes was and how to get it and how not to get it. And ever since, my reputation with my family has been ruined. And you know what? This is good, because I went to bed, I passed out. My cousin was supposed to sleep in the same room as I did, and she couldn't get in. She had to sleep somewhere else. But ever since, and this is important for how miraculous AA is, and how people who are not alcoholics, and also people who don't go to AA, who don't know AA, cannot understand, because to this day, my aunts and uncles and cousins and nieces and look at me and they wonder, how can she be so well? How come they look at my children? My children are super successful. Nothing. I mean, I'm not an achiever. I just let them go. I mean, the best is Emmett Fox's prayer: is divine intelligence dwells in children, expresses itself through them. You say it once, it's there forever. And children, just let them go. They're flying, and they have wings. They have wings. I don't even know where they're flying. Which is wonderful, which I wish my parents had had this sort of attitudes for me, because I would have spared me 30 years of AA and therapy. But I mean, they're just gone in worlds where we will never go. And this is the way it should be when you have healthy parents. I'm a healthy parent because I'm a sober parent. I'm super healthy. I'm super healthy as a parent because I learned my lesson and have my women watching over me, and they tell me when I go wrong. For example, when this little this loser of dad, I have to speak low. When he left me when I was pregnant with the second, he was also a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but he left me when I was pregnant with the second one, and I became what I never wanted to be, as a single mom in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I mean, that was a jackpot, but I didn't know that. But when my sponsee saw me fighting with my ex in front of my children, she immediately took me aside and said, "You don't do that. You never do that. You never argue in front of your children." And because I'm sober, it's enough that she says it once, and I'm not going to do it again. Yeah. So this is the grace. I'm a great parent by default. I have a big book study because I do regular big book studies. They're like every week, 10, 20, whoever wants to come can come to my house. My children are used to it.
Okay, so let me ask you about
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
I'm on an email list of yours now because, and
Yeah,
by the let me go ahead and I just want to real quickly tell people how we met and came across each other. There was a lady who listens to Sober Speak. Her name is Brite, Brite, and she had seen you speak at a conference. I guess it's
yeah,
over a year ago or so. Now we've been trying to get this. I went silent for a while, and then I picked it back
yes.
up with you, and you were very gracious. Um, by the way, what was the name of that conference? Do you know what the name of that
That
conference
was
was?
the yearly Norwegian AA conference
Okay.
once a year.
So you were there, you were speaking, and then
Yes.
so somehow I got on your email list, and I noticed that you send them because I was emailing you,
Yeah.
and yeah, I noticed that you have big book studies. Tell me about those big book studies, and what is it? Is it all at your house? Is it online?
Okay, so this is how I started. My sponsor, 35 years ago, Betty Simpson from Phoenix, Arizona, she was a big book lady, and she took us to the big book mildly because Joy and Charlie hadn't come on the surface yet. But she took, and she knew her stuff. She knew her book, and you know, the big book convinced me, has always convinced me more than any talk from any AA, because this is upon which we all agree. I have it here because I'm currently reviewing the translation for the German big book, which is here. This is my German big book.
Yeah,
And
you can't see this, but she's showing me
oh
the
yeah, you
big.
don't see it. Oh yeah, sorry. Anyway, um, so I've been doing big book studies all my life, and of course then Joy and Charlie came in. You know, they say that Bill wrote the book and Joy and Charlie explained it, and and now we have hundreds of such incredible big book studies online. From the best, you know, and it's I love to listen to those, and but we didn't. I was traveling in the States 5 years to 2014, and I went to a little meeting in Florida at 6 o'clock in the morning. My husband is sleeping at the hotel. Ever since when we go on holidays, I go to meetings and he goes do whatever he needs to do, and we have great holidays. We used to go to places where there's no AA, and we had terrible holidays because then I needed to argue with him all night. Now I said, let's go to a place where there's lots of meetings. Then I then I can leave you alone. And he's super happy because he sleeps. I go to a meeting at 6 o'clock and I come back in a good mood. And if I need, I go to a meeting at 10 o'clock when he sleeps. And then we can have whatever normal people want for holidays, which he wants is a nice place to stay, some good food, a nice, a pool and some water, and if we're lucky, some good sex and some good reading. And but that wasn't happening when I was going to places because I've only been married. I've only been in a relationship I've been married for 8 years. I've been in a relationship for 10 years. But I was the longest single person in Alcoholics Anonymous. So if anybody whines about being single, they should talk to me because nobody tops 25 years in AA and no relationships. I had kids before the relationship because God was nice to me. But so I go to meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning in this beautiful place, and they're like, for us, it's like a miracle. Like for us Europeans, because our AA is not that big, so they're like 40 people at 6 o'clock in the morning coming to a meeting before work, and beautiful meetings, sunset on the porch is brilliant. And then the meeting ends. I just go to the bathroom to go to my car and go over. And there's this man sitting with a newcomer. I heard him share the meeting, and he's an old time, and he's sitting there with a new guy, and he's going through the book. And it's the most tender and the most magic atmosphere. And I could just sense the vibes that, oh man, I need to go do that again when I come back to Germany. So I started this big book study where everybody's invited once a week at my house. Anybody who wants to come can come. And we'll figure something out. It's like, that's what I love about AA. There's always enough room. And so my husband is a little annoyed, but he's very, very, very nice to me about this. It's like, oh, it's your big book study. The kids are like, oh, mommy, you're having your Bible study. And because they come and then we pray together. And then if there's somebody needs to cry, they cry. And then we do the big book study, and then we pray. And it's like, I mean, the neighbors know, the cleaning lady know. Everybody's like, okay, this is what's happening. But a lot of the newcomers.
And so let me ask about that real quick. How do you, what kind of impression do you believe? And how many children do you have? And how many have been two? Okay. What kind of impression do you believe that's had on your kids throughout the years? Do they talk about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I got my children. I have sober children, so I was 15 years sober when I had my first kid, or 13 years. So I mean, they've grown up. Well, they're like the oldest goes to there was a time he was like 14, 15, and he goes to. I have a newcomer sitting there, and he goes to her and said, "So do you have a sponsor?" And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "So what step are you on?" It's just like they're brilliant. The younger one is like this. He's at school, and they're gonna. So there's like he's like 9, and the teacher says we're going to do a special week on addiction, and my son goes like this, me, and she's like, what is it, Jack? My mom is an alcoholic, she's a food addict, she's an anorexic, and she swallowed a fork, she can come and talk to us. And the teacher calls me a half an hour later. I think we have a problem with your son, Jack. I think he's lying. And I said, oh, why would he be lying? I said, oh, we said this addiction. He said you were an alcoholic and a pill addict. And I said, oh, no, this is all true. And we'll gladly come and talk. So I round up a few people and we do this. So this is, for them, or I'm doing a 5th step with a sponsee, and she sits there and we almost finish. And when we finish the 5th step, we're supposed to say, is there anything that you have left out? Is there anything you would, that comes up that you think you should share? And she goes like, and my children usually have their headphones so they don't listen, but they go through because we don't have that much space in the house. So he's doing something, and she says, oh yeah, I stole some toothpaste at the dentist, some samples. Do I need to make amends for that? And the little one, he turns around and said, no, you don't need to make amends for that. That's okay. And I'm like, and I said, he's right. But Jack, no. So they're like, man, they got it.
Okay, so I got you off track. You were talking about that big book study. You said anyone's invited. They can come over.
Yeah, so sometimes we're 2, sometimes we're 30, sometimes. And then since Zoom, we've been doing it online. I'm doing a big book study. Then it grew. And especially because people had asked me to do German big book studies. Now you have to know that I'm the only person in Germany doing a big book study in German. So last Saturday, I'm happy to announce you that for 4 hours, I do a big book study. And it was the chapter to the agnostics. And we had 185 people.
Wow.
And that grew from 10 people. I was doing it. I started doing it once a month in special occasion because we were getting too big in German. And it's just completely, nobody has ever had the big book explained to them in German, except me, who has done it and who's doing it at a scale. I mean, there have been other clusters, but it's just been, so this is yeah. And so
you're like the German Joe and Charlie, basically.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's completely. Every time people cry, people say, "Oh, I've never." People sober 40 years cry and say, "I've never had a God in my life. I've never understood what this was about. I feel like I'm starting my sobriety again, and it's over." And the newcomers, of course, for them it's brilliant, but the old timers too. And I'm trying to do it in a real nice way so nobody gets to be shamed for not knowing the book. It's like super open, and we have a posse of people in Berlin. Berlin is the strongest sort of the strongest cluster of AA in Germany. And it's only because of Betty Simpson. I'm not saying it's because of me, but it is. But it's not because of me. It's just because I'm sober and I do the work. So my sponsor, the second one I had, it was an army wife, because after Germany, after France, I moved to Karlsruhe. She was an army wife, Lori, and she was Southern California, very, 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 very hardcore AA. And I had these 2 women, and it says in the book, God will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. And I never had the fellowship I craved in Germany. except in the English-speaking meetings, but they're small and expat. And then it happened in Berlin. 10 years ago, a woman I sponsored another woman, and it started to grow, and people started to be incredibly active. And 10 years ago, we read in the big book, we read the statistics, and at the beginning in the chapter, in the foreword, it said the statistics. The statistics is here's the word. The statistics, the 75%. Yeah.
Looking for the first 100 men and women?
Where was it? By the number. Where's the statistics? Oh, fuck. No, I'm not supposed to say fuck. Take that back. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Hey, listen. While you're trying to find that,
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I call a little a mid-tro announcement here. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can look for
do
that. We will be continuing. We will be continuing our rapid fire conversation with Julia in just a moment. Just a reminder, you are listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the World Wide Web at www.soberspeak.com. You can also find the donate button on our website, which you can use if and only if the Spirit moves you to do such. Please keep in mind this is a podcast funded by you, the listener. Sober Speak is a self-supporting organization through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. All right, now back to Miss Julia. All right, Julia, so did you find what you were looking for?
Yes. So on page Roman number 20, of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses. And among the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. So today the rate is about 5%, 3%, well, 7 if we're lucky. But we said, let's do it 75% in Berlin. Let's just do it. And it's women, because we just sponsor women. I sponsor women. So we have this incredible group of sober women. It's happening. It's 75%. It's 50% in our meetings.
Okay, so if somebody is listening to this, and I can see somebody doing that, and it's all German speaking, right?
Yeah, in Berlin. But you can do it anyway. Because we started we go to hospitals where we get the newcomers. The newcomers come to a meeting. They get phone lists and they get sponsors. Not assigned, but freely, and then it's just all this structure that you guys do, but it's working.
Yeah, but can somebody join this via Zoom at this time in
German? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so and how would they find that if they're listening to this and they want to contact you for that?
They have to go on the German website anonymealkoholiker.de. It's easy to find, and then they go online meetings and they click on the Berlin Intergroup, and there are the meetings, the Zoom meetings, and we are the first in Berlin in 10 days, like everywhere else in America, but it took us 3 days, and all the meetings were on Zoom. And now, because for us it's incredibly important for Germany, because the whole of Germany can attend those Berlin meetings. So now when the meetings go live again, we can never close these meetings again.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are too many people who just got sober and but it's great, it's amazing. So we are just like, for us and for AA in Germany, COVID has been such a grace in disguise, a gift, because there was an incredible resistance, and I will shortly explain to you, not too long because it takes a long time, but the person who first translated the big book in German was a non-alcoholic German priest who loved AA, but he was non-alcoholic and he didn't get the book. So it was a book that nobody read because it was real. It was religious. And this guy never had to work the steps. If you have never had to work the steps, then you can't translate the big book because you don't get how important certain things are. And so nobody read it. And still, there are many people who are 40 years sober. They've never read the big book. We said, this book doesn't make sense to me. Then there has been a couple of attempts of retranslation, but there's never been anybody who's worked the steps according to the book who translated it. I'm now fresh in the literature team. It took a long time to get there because there's a lot of resistance. AA is like every structure. It's like, you're not going to come on my turf. And I know, like all that stuff. But this is changing. But But then they gave the book, because they realized it was a terrible translation. They gave the book to an outside translator who did whatever they could, but he or she translated it like a novel. And it completely softened all the edges of the program. It made it really weird. So nobody wants to work the program according to the big book because it's like really weird. And again, so now we're trying to retranslate it. But so now finally there's somebody, because I speak English and I've done all my, I've got all my schooling in English, and I can finally say, okay, this is a mistake in the translation and you have to write something else, but this is what it means and this is what you're supposed to do. So this, John, I want to say this because it's so important. Is the case in many, many countries where the big book has been translated. It's an issue faced. This is why there's such a resistance to the program. I was once called by the German Central Office, and threatened with a court case if I didn't stop my big book studies.
Really?
Yeah. But that central office has a new director now, and she's a woman, and she's from Berlin. So that's history. But still, you have to imagine being an AA member. Your central office, which you love, calls you and says, we're going to sue you because you're doing big book studies.
What was the issue? I mean, what was the genesis of that? Do you know?
It's not AA. It was also the logo. You're using the logo on your flyer, which I didn't know, because in Germany the logo isn't free, but in America the logo is free. They're free. There's no logo anymore on the big books in America, but we still have the logo because we paid for it for 10 years.
Wow.
So stuff like that. But it's like incredible. So anyway, so this is the work we do.
Okay, so there's another thing that I wanted to ask you about, which you kind of slid in there a little while ago, but we really didn't talk about it. And that is, you talked about anorexia, and you talked about an eating disorder. And I think that a lot of people would like to know about that. Did that start when you were a kid?
So I have 3 siblings. I have parents who are war children. They're both. My mom was born in 1940, in the middle of the Second World War, and my dad was 33. He was in the Hitler Youth, and they just grew up in a country that was completely destroyed. And especially, they also suffered hunger post-war. Post-war, the worst. My mother used to say. And these are people who didn't have were just happy to live and not talk about bad things anymore. So I grew up, and it's very typical for Germans. They were very hard people because they had experienced horrible things in that small childhood, and they were just not going to talk about uncomfortable stuff. So it was the German miracle, economic success, but no feelings. So I grew up as a kid, and in our children, we starved emotionally, all of the children, but my parents starved too. But they were the adults. They could have but they couldn't take care of themselves. So we all starved. And with 8 or 7 or 5, I developed a sleeping disorder. And really, my whole drinking is the story of my sleeping disorder, my anxiety. I drank to sleep. That's basically what it was. I drank to sleep. And it was happy because I drank every night, and I always drank myself to sleep. And alcohol was my answer. And it didn't matter how much, because as long as I ended up in sleeping at the end, I was fine. And then, of course, also was the age of the criminal actions of the same company today who's doing this other stupid drug, but the Valium is the same. The Oxy, whatever, this horrible drug. Same. Valium was very hype, very good advertising campaign. So everybody was on Valium, and so was my mother. But my mother is not an addict. But she was doing her recreational Valium and diet pills. And when I couldn't sleep, she gave me Valium, and she didn't know that I was had an addicted personality, or an addictive body, and I was hooked immediately. So I was very early. I was hooked on Valium, and the diet pills came in handy because my mom is one of these women that are very common, that you're not worth anything unless you're skinny. I mean, for my mother, if you're not skinny, you have no chance. It's existential to be skinny, because if you're not skinny, you don't get a man. If you don't get a man, you starve and you die. Simple. So skinny above everything. So I grew up with, and then, puberty with the little roundings coming up, and that was the end of my, so I was a very critical mom, very absent dad, and so I had I had this food issue. I wasn't a big kid at all, but I was just rounding up in puberty, and that was it. I starved myself. I lost my kilos, and I didn't have my period anymore. And I gave my parents what I thought they wanted, which was a kid and not a woman, because their projection of sexuality and their projection of what it meant to be a woman, and it's just like way too much for them. So I spared them the problem. I became anorexic, but there's a price to pay for anorexia, which is deep depression. So I discovered binging and throwing up, and that accentuated the depression, because the bulimia makes you more unworthy. Anorexics are so proud; they will die, but they will die proud and skinny. But bulimics are more dirty; they feel much more dirty, and alcohol saved my life, because hadn't I discovered alcohol, I would have died from this disease, because I was I was so in the clutches of the evil of my mother that I wouldn't have gotten out. And alcohol saved my life.
Okay, so explain that to me. How, and by the way, I want to let you know, I so much relate to this. My mom was anorexic. She was bulimic.
Oh,
I grew up with that. I
oh my
didn't
God,
know
yeah.
exactly what was going on at the time. And I do remember her saying there was some king, or excuse me, queen, I think she had quoted, and the queen said something to the effect of, you can never be too rich or too thin. And she took that to heart, believe me. Uh,
My mom died recently, and I'll come to that later. But she lost a lot of weight before she died, because she had cancer, and the doctors were saying, Miss Kratz, you need to eat. And she said, why should I eat? I'm finally skinny. I will die skinny. I'm so happy. She was like, but she had this soup. It was absurd, but it was really funny. It was
you got to find humor in
mom.
it. Huh?
Yeah, anyway,
Right.
so
So
yeah.
explain to me then mm, how alcoholism saved you somehow from anorexia.
Yeah,
What
because
is the twist?
anorexia is the girl, the well functioning, sweet, nice girl. It's a nice girl personality. The anorexia, she's always nice. She will always do everything that society asks of her, but she will die by doing it. She's do her little secret thing with food. So it's a matter of control. I'm in control of my body and my food, so I can just pretend I'm good at school. I have good grades. I perform well. I take care of those younger brothers and siblings. I I cook for the whole family, and inside I'm dying. But it's the furthest ago, it's the furthest away from anger, but it's an anger towards myself. It's an unexpressed anger really of starving emotionally, and and um, and when I had a spiritual awakening at the hospital, because I had by accident I'd swallowed a fork, because I'd put the fork so deep in my throat to make myself throw up that I'd swallowed it, and I was in the hospital, and I didn't want to die. Everybody thought I wasn't to die. I wanted to die, but I really didn't want to die. It was just an accident, and my mom was visiting me, and she was really in a pitiful and incomprehensible Al-Anon demoralization, and I saw that if I don't get away from my mother, I will die. I was 14. I had this spiritual awakening in the hospital. I was really sick, but I knew that if I don't get away from my mother, I will die from the emotional entanglement. So I got out of the hospital. I had liver damage because I tried to kill myself with alcohol, so I couldn't drink for a little while. And then I started to drink. And the alcohol enabled me to become an angry teenager. And with the anger, I could step out of the aura of my family. And this is what needed to happen, or I would have died.
Wow.
Because I was so loyal emotionally to my mother. And I needed to stop being, because adolescence is the time when you stop being loyal to your parents. And for some parents, it's easy. They can let their children go. But for some parents, it's extremely hard to let their children go. And I had the kind of family where my mother saw herself in her children and she couldn't let go. So,
boy, do I can relate to that, Miss Julia.
yeah,
I
yeah,
had the same thing with my mother. She just could not
yeah,
let me go.
yeah.
I've heard you talk before
Mm-hmm.
about a story.
Yeah.
You called it the prodigal
Oh,
daughter.
yeah, yeah.
And I love that story. And I think it's a good way to kind of
Wrap up
wrap
already.
this up.
Oh
Yeah.
no, already.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
that's
so
all right. We can come back again some other
and
time.
of course, so I love this story. I'm not a religious person because I tell you the story of my thing with my family is Protestant. The Germans tend to be Protestants, and we were in Africa when I was growing up, and they were the French were there. They were all Catholics, and it was weird because we stuck together. The Germans stuck a little bit. It was a very small community because it was very poor, a poor small city where we were, and the French would go to mass on Sunday, and they were our neighbors, and then they would gather at this neighbor's place, one house further from our house, and they had these amazing potlucks. And these are our friends because we had same age, and we would run over because they were all friends, and we were tolerated. The German Protestant kids were only tolerated, and sometimes, often, we were asked to leave because we
Wow.
were told you are not invited because you're Protestant. And when I was a kid, I said, I don't want a God like this. I really do. This is really weird, religion. For me, religion is for the Catholics. That's it. They own it. So I let go. And then there was another, because you asked me to talk about that. I was still drinking, and I was visiting my parents. I was already studying in Paris, and I was visiting my parents who were living in Kenya at the time, and we flew Alitalia. And I sat in second class next to a Belgian priest because we were going over Rome with Alitalia. He was getting off in Rome, and I was flying to Nairobi. And we're drinking wine together. I'm still drinking. I'm like 17, 18, I don't know. And we're drinking wine, having a really nice talk. He's a good man. He's a little big, and we talk about God, and it was really interesting. And as we got off the plane, because I needed to change plane, and he got off to go to the Vatican, he looked at me and he said goodbye and said, "Oh, it was so nice to meet you." And he said to me, "God bless you, my child." And when he said that, it hit me like, it led me to the deepest of my guts. And I wished so much to be worthy of a blessing like that. And I knew I wasn't worthy. But I said, I wished I could really be blessed, but I knew I couldn't be blessed. So I went back, drinking, do my thing. And then I found AA. And I told you that I found AA in Paris. And the story for me is this. I read this story in the Bible, and it's the Bible of the prodigal son. In German, it's called the lost son, but I prefer the prodigal son. And I call myself the prodigal daughter. So there's this father, and he's got two daughters. And the father is God, of course. And so the father says, one daughter says to her dad, "Dad, I want all my inheritance. I want to go out in the world. I want adventure. This is all crap. This old world of yours. Let me just go and have my adventure." And my dad is very generous, and he gives me my part of the inheritance. And the other daughter wants to stay with dad. Fine, she's the Al-Anon, I say. She's the Al-Anon, she's boring. So she stays with dad. I go out and I squander my inheritance. I do drugs and coke and drink and I whore, and it goes quick, and I think I'm living, and I think this is it. I've arrived, and I find myself eating with pigs at the pig stall. And as an alcoholic, I don't mind eating with pigs. I really don't mind, because I don't care how deep I sink. I don't care with whom I sleep as long as I drink. And I have, vodka and sex is my illusion of a good time. I don't care, because I'm this, and I find myself eating with pigs, and I wake up and I'm eating with pigs, and I think, and I remember my father, and I remember the great, beautiful rolling hills, the great mansion, the generosity, all the people that work for him. And I think maybe I can go back, and maybe he will take me in as a day laborer because I'm not worthy to be his daughter, but maybe I can work for him. This will be better than eating with pigs. And this is me as I decide to go to AA, because when I decided that I'm going to go to AA now and I'm going to be sober, I'm 20. I said to myself, I'm 20 years old and I'm never going to have any fun again in my life when I stop drinking. My fun is over, but it was okay. I'm going to go get sober and I'm never going to have fun again in my entire life. It's like this day I'm going to work for my dad. I'm going to be a day laborer. And then I go home, I stand up and I start to walk towards my dad's house and my dad's country. And my dad sees me from far away. And that's you in AA, the people in AA. You see me from far away. Say, oh, she's coming back. Slaughter the lamb, get the coat, get the ring, get the sandals. Because my daughter was lost and now she's back. And that's how I was welcomed in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was welcomed like an answer to your prayers. This is why I say when we pray, when we have a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers, this is a serious prayer, because I picture, everybody has seen The Walking Dead, and I picture all the alcoholics, they're just walking like this, and we're walking in this zombie land, and we say this prayer, the moment of silence for the still suffering alcoholic, and these zombies, they hear us. And they start to come towards us. I really believe that. So they're all, like the walkers, they all come to the fire or to the sound, whatever, the zombies. But this is what it is. So you have to take this prayer. This prayer is super serious. And so I come home and you're so happy to see me and you welcome me. The lamb is slaughtered. The table is set. My cup runneth over. And I remember at my very first meeting, this little Californian girl, Dane was her name. She looked me in the eyes and her eyes were so sparkly and her skin was sparkly and her blonde hair were sparkly. And she looked at me in the eyes and said, you haven't seen fun yet. You don't know what fun is. And of course, this promise has been, has come true in my life. I mean, my life has been so full of joy and so full of life, of a lot of tough shit that happened. But, I wrote to GSO once and I was like, it was before I had my kids. I wrote to them. I said, it's not true. What's written in the 12 and 12 bill was wrong, because it says that when you're single, you can be a happy 12-stepper. And I said, it's not true. I've been single for 12 years and I'm not a happy 12-stepper. I've done all my homework. I've worked all my steps and I'm a very eager 12-stepper, but I'm not happy. So it's not true. And they published that in the Grapevine. It was really sweet. And then they wrote me, Julia, pain is the touchstone to progress, so keep trudging. But so just so if you write to GSO, they'll write you back. But anyway, so I've so
that's great. Okay, so let me ask you this then. You are going to be, there's a lot of people around the globe that are going to be listening to this.
Yeah.
And I just, do you have any parting thoughts from your experience, strength, and hope to say, in essence, this is where I was, this is where I am today, and I need you to know this.
That's such a, I think it's in the chapter We Agnostics. Either God is or he isn't. Either God is everything or he's nothing. What was our choice to be? And it's a choice. The third step is not the choice. The third step, I have to work at it constantly every day. It's this healthy discipline versus a toxic self-loathing, which I'm very good at. The negativity, I'm no good, I'm not good enough, everybody's whatever. I'm black belt, third dan in negativity, morbid thinking. I'm really good at it. So my only job, and faith is something that has to work 24 hours a day. So this is my practice for the rest of my life, is, as the big book says, grab the great and fine doctors out there if you need them, because they're The longer you're sober, the better your therapists get. Because you always get the therapists and the doctors and the experts you deserve. So don't believe that AA is enough, of course, but there's also so much more. So be hungry, get more. And if you're dissatisfied, it's good. If you're desperate, it's good. Celebrate your despair if you don't drink, because it's always a pointer to the more that we long for. I am 35 years sober and I still long for more. I love more. I'm a more slut. Every day I wake up and say, God, I want more. And God is like, I hear you, kid. This is why I gave you AA, because in AA there's limitless expansion, like it says in the Keys to the Kingdom. And I'm never tiring of more. And when the Rolling Stones sing, Mick Jagger sings, I can't get no satisfaction. They had an interview with him. It's not about sex. We all think it's about sex, but it's about artistic creation. And in AA, we are artists. We're artists, because anybody who becomes a channel for God, which is what we do, because we work the 12 steps, the 9 steps, step 3 till 9. This is, I call it the golden toilet brush. You clean your channel, and then the channel is clean, and then you become a channel for God, and then it's limitless expansion. Everything you wanted in the bottle, you're going to get, and more.
I love it, Julie. You obviously learned English very well, even some of the finer crass details. I've never heard somebody say, I'm a more slut.
Yeah.
I would put that as the title for this episode, but I don't think I want to go quite out on All right. Well, listen, you are a treat. I mean, a treat. I'm so glad that Britt referred you over to me and we were able to make this happen. To close it up, I always read the page 164 of the big book. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Miss Julia, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. God bless you, Julia. Thank you so much.
Too.
This has been great. We'll have a little discussion here afterwards, and we'll talk about getting you back on at some other time to finish out some other conversation, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much, John.
Wasn't Julia absolutely fantastic? I so much enjoyed spending time with her. I've already got some time scheduled with her for some recording here in the near future. It'll take a little while to get the episode out, but I really, really enjoyed my time with her. And Julia, if you're out there in Germany and you're listening, God bless you. Thank you so much for your vulnerability. That was absolutely fantastic. By the way, I don't know if you know her, but we've actually had Mimi F on the Sober Speak podcast as well in the past. We'll have to introduce you to. But nonetheless, remember now, we don't want you spreading your disease, but we do want you sharing this episode with a friend or family member if you think it would be helpful. Remember, it may be just what they need today. So go ahead and pause your device, hit that little share button, and send it on over to a friend or family member. Now, on to a lot of listener feedback. First of all, I want to share this. This comes from a gentleman. This comes from, I'm just going to give his Twitter handle out. It is at alcoholic dad, the number 4. And he posts this on Twitter. And Alcoholic Dad 4 says, Gary K! Exclamation point. I was lucky enough to hear Gary the night he shared. And he's talking about Gary K's live event. If you hadn't heard that one, go back and look up Gary K live. And it said how he nailed 6 and 7, step 6 and 7, showed me a new concept on defects. And then he put in parentheses, I'm never putting my laptop on the kitchen table, though. Just saying, progress, not perfection. Thank you for this event, Sober Speak. And if you don't know what he's talking about with that, I'm just going to leave it be and say, go back and listen to Gary K. I think it was the second episode where we're going through the Q&A with him, but it's the most recent Gary K episodes where Gary K is talking about secrets. And at Alcoholic Dad says, I'm not putting my laptop on the kitchen table. If you've heard that, you'll know exactly what he's talking about. Nonetheless, Robbie writes in and he says, Hey, John, I've been enjoying the podcast in recent months as a supplement to dealing with not attending face-to-face meetings. I was wondering if you could hook me up to join the secret Facebook group. And well, you know, Robbie, we got you out that invite. He says, I want to find out how to go to other Zoom meetings around the world and the country for one thing. Are there some meetings listed in the show notes or on the website? I appreciate the show and the help. Robbie C., Somerville, South Carolina. Well, Robbie C. in Somerville, South Carolina, that is a good idea. We should probably have that on the website, the SoberSpeak website, but we don't. But here's what I can tell you. When you were in that SoberSpeak Facebook group, and I'm sure I emailed this to you, but this is for the rest of the people listening. Go ahead and either type in Zoom meetings, because there's in the search feature, I guess I should say, for in the group, there are so many Zoom meetings that get posted in that group, and there's also guides that people have put up for various websites all across the world and various meetings that are going on all across the world. In fact, Jenny L actually made a Word document and she placed it in the group. So it should be in there. If you can't find it, you or anybody else, just type a comment in the Facebook group and it says, hey, does anybody know where I can find Zoom meetings around the country? And you will get hammered with responses. Joe writes in, and Joe says, John, I recently found your podcast. I enjoyed it very much. One of my first was with Gary K., who we were just talking about. He says, just wondering if he speaks at local AA Zoom speaker meetings. The group I attend is the Abbeville area group in Abbeville, Louisiana. We would love to have him on one Saturday night. Would it be possible to get his contact info and request such a visit? Joe, as you know, I went ahead and sent you his contact information, and I'll let you guys work out the details on Gary K. actually speaking at your Zoom meeting. But then Joe followed up with another email, and he said, hey, can I get that? So let me just say it again here. If you are out there in all four corners of the world, and you are looking for an English-speaking Zoom meeting speaker in Alcoholics, in AA and Al-Anon, actually, I have a list. I've put together a list of 15 or so people that I know are more than willing to be a guest speaker for a Zoom meeting if it fits into their schedule. And these are people who have all been on the podcast before. And if you want that list, just email me at johnjohn@soberspeak.com. I will get you that list. I'm also available myself. Joe was asking me if I wanted to come in as well. But nonetheless, we can get you speakers. And like I said, these people have all been on the podcast before. You can go back and listen to them before you invite them in if you want to kind of give them a little audition or whatever the case may be. But glad to get y'all hooked up there, Joe. Deborah writes in, and Deborah says, "Hi, John. I adore your podcast." Well, thank you, Miss Deborah. "And I find the interviews you do to be very helpful and motivating. You are so good at asking the right questions and keeping the conversation moving. I am so thankful you have found your work." Oh, you're sweet, Deborah. Thank you. She says, "Years ago, about 10 years, I was involved, excuse-moi, for the little chokey that I had right there." Anyway, she says, "Years ago, it's about 10 years, I was involved in a great Al-Anon group in Orlando. It was a tight-knit group of about 7 regulars, but as work and life got busier, I attended the meetings less and less and eventually stopped going altogether and lost touch with the members over the years. I am now retired. I was a teacher and instructional coach, and I have started rereading 12-step literature and listening to different recovery podcasts. My personal drugs of choice are food and shopping. And having little too much free time in retirement during a pandemic, no less, I am turning to food and shopping way more than I want to be. I am finding your podcast to be extremely helpful, though. I am also doing lots of journaling and reading, which is also helping. I may even seek out another Al-Anon group. Thank you for the email, and please keep doing what you're doing. God bless you and your family, Deborah." Well, God bless you, Miss Deborah, and thank you so much for writing in. Mallory DMs on the Instagram. She direct message on the Instagram. She says, "Thank you for your podcast, John. I only recently found it, and it's been really helpful this last month. I've been sober for 1 year and 5 months, and I feel like I found your podcast at just the right time. I've had to walk through some of my biggest fears in sobriety lately, and having this meeting between meetings is truly helping me stay sane." And she puts a big smiley face. Thanks again. Well, God bless you, Mallory. Keep up the good work and keep me posted. Deb writes in, and this is not to be confused with Deborah from moments ago. This is Deb. And Deb writes in, and she says, and the subject line is Maria R., episode 75. She says, "Hello, John. I just found your podcast, and I'm truly enjoying it. Thank you so much. I wanted to write in and say how much I related to Maria R. I have been going to meetings via Zoom since July and went to my first in-person meeting 2 months ago. So much of what Maria said resonated with me. I was the good soccer mom and didn't really drink until a few years after hitting 40. These past 3 years, my disease progressed, and it is now apparent I do have a problem with alcohol. If it is possible, could you pass my email to Maria? I am in my first 30 days once again. Connecting with another mom, wife, Christian, alcoholic like Maria would be a blessing. Thank you for your ministry you are providing. With gratitude, Deb P." Well, as you know, Deb, I got you two in touch, and I'm so glad that Maria on episode number 75 hit you like that. And you know, I appreciate the nice things you guys say about me, but really, what really makes me float high is when somebody says, they listen to somebody like Maria that we put out there, and they related to it, and it helped them. I mean, it is just absolutely fantastic. I love hearing things about the other speakers that we put out here, and I'm so happy that you wrote in, Deb. Kim writes in and she says, "Hi, John. I love your podcast. You do a wonderful job hosting it and finding such great speakers." You know, and I've thought about this before, Kim, and that is all I'm doing. You know, the world that is listening to my podcast is just hearing a very, very small sliver of the people that we have available in all these recovery programs, whether it's AA, Al-Anon, or any of the others that we have across the land. I don't think others realize how much knowledge and wisdom and well thought out good people that we have in the programs of Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, and others. It's just, I mean, it really is incredible when you think about it. But nonetheless, thank you, Kim. She says, I just loved Gary K. We have our own small business. We sell antique lighting on Etsy and eBay. Then also do a few shows in Texas. Come on down, y'all. She says, my husband works in the back of a warehouse and I work in the front listening to the podcast and shipping. Well, I must have turned off the podcast 12 different times to go back and share with him the great things I heard. He's probably like, keep working. Anyway, she says, he has been in recovery 20 years, NA. She says, I have also been in Al-Anon for 10 years. We have spent the last year fully embracing our programs instead of our sickness. And it has been so much better than I or he ever could have imagined. I always felt sad when I heard about, quote, family recovery, unquote, because I never dreamed it could happen for us. We both have peace. Seems strange at first, then you wonder how you could have ever lived any other way. We live on Route 66 in Springfield, Missouri. Get your kicks on Route 66. Anyway, she says, I found your podcast searching on Stitcher for recovery podcasts. God made sure yours was at the top of the search for me. Well, thank you, Stitcher, and thank you, God. She says, I listen to hours of podcasts every day, some for fun, others to keep my emotional sobriety in check. Alcoholics and I are the same family stories, same inner feelings and demons. I just don't drink. Therefore, I appreciate listening to the great speakers you get and will keep listening. My first one that I listened to was the Al-Anon one with Angie B. Oh, she's great. She said, I was so excited. I shared the info on your podcast with my home group that day. Well, Miss Kim out there on Route 66 in Springfield, Missouri, give your husband my best and let him work back there. Quit interrupting it. I'm just kidding. But anyway, thanks for writing in, Kim. Bill C. writes in, and not the Bill C. that's been on this podcast in the past many times. It's another Bill C. Can you imagine that? There's another Bill C. He says, hello, John. I'd like to start by saying, in big capital letters, thank you for your service! Exclamation point. Your podcast is added to my spiritual toolkit. My home group here is Serenity by the Sea Group in Bay Shore, New York. So if somebody is listening out there and you are from the Serenity by the Sea Group in Bay Shore, New York, go ahead and tell Bill C. we said hello, and we appreciate him writing in. But anyway, he says, my sober date is 6/6/96, so June 6th of 1996. He says, I have a commitment and a sponsor. Gratefully, our group has opened back up to in-person meetings, but I'm still hooked on, in big capital letters, sober speak. Excuse me again. I've recently gone back to episode 1, Mumbai Mike. Awesome stuff. Now I'm working my way up the list. Well, that's great, Bill. I mean, oh my goodness, you got quite a few episodes to listen to. And you can also kind of see when you go back and start at the beginning, the progression. In other words, I was pretty inept at the beginning of this, and I'm fairly inept still, but at least I got, a little bit more streamlined with putting these things out. With these things to put out an episode when I first started, oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe how long it took you. It's just a matter of trial and error. But nonetheless, he says, I have a question for you. Maybe somewhere around episode number 150, you had a speaker that created a website that was like a big book study, including a good 4-step work page. Would you be able to point me in the direction of that speaker? Well, you know what? I wrote back, Bill C., and that was Mr. Rick W. I'm pretty sure is who you're speaking about there. You can go back and find his episode, and he did a fantastic job. He said, and then he says, Which episode are you the speaker on, John M? I need to hear that one. I'd say Bill C. from the West Coast is always on point and keeps 100% of my attention when he's sharing. Thanks again, Bill C. Well, you know what? This is not the first time I've had that question. People want to hear me on this podcast. And you know, I don't know what it is, but I just feel funny having my story record and saying, I mean, you know, you guys hear enough of me during all this stuff that I do, and I've never recorded myself for my podcast. I may do that one day, but I just haven't yet. I'm actually on a lot of other podcasts. People have recorded me, and so I'm out there, but I've just not, I've not had an episode. I could have, you know, the lovely Mrs. M come in here and ask me some questions one day, maybe record something, or one of my good friends. But anyway, so far just haven't done it. But thanks for asking, Bill C. Eric writes in, and Eric says, "Hi, John. My name is Eric. I live in Denver, Colorado. My sobriety date is, April 10th of 2018. I found SoberSpeak through a search on the Apple Podcast app. I listen to recovery content almost daily while I'm walking my dog. I have listened to the Joe and Charlie Big Book Comes Alive sessions many times and have dabbled in dozens of other podcasts. SoberSpeak is my far by favorite." Well, that's very nice of you, Mr. Eric, because I know there's a lot of good ones out there. He says, "I think of Bill C., Gary K., and David G. in particular almost as friends and mentors." I get it. I do get that, Eric. He says, I have listened to many other episodes several times over and over and refer them to friends and sponsees all the time. I am deeply grateful for you bringing SoberSpeak to the world. It's an essential part of my recovery, especially during the pandemic. Thank you, Eric A. Well, thank you, Eric A. Thank you for listening. That was very kind of you, and you're right. I'm the same way. I think of all these people as mentors and friends of mine as well, and I'm glad that they have had an impact on your life. Nicole writes in, and she says, "Hello, John." She doesn't actually say that. I say it like that. I put the accent on there. I doubt she's English, but who knows? Says, "Hello, John. I live in Macomb, Michigan. My sobriety date is August 9th, 2015. The program of AA saved my life. I'm currently working as a case manager and peer recovery support specialist of a nonprofit human service agency." That was a mouthful, but it sounds like you're doing good work out there, Nicole. She says, "I discovered the podcast on Spotify after a Google search for best sobriety podcast. I have enjoyed the last few episodes I have listened to. Please send me, John, if you will, an invitation to the private FB group at this email address. Thank you for all you do, Nicole C. Well, Nicole C. up there in Macomb, Michigan, shout out to you. And thanks for keep coming back, Miss Nicole. Matt writes in, and Matt says, "My name is Matt. I have been sober for 4 years as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love your show and have listened to all of your episodes multiple times." My goodness, Matt. He says, "I've been through the steps, but never with a sponsor due to the fact that very few people in my area have the kind of a recovery that I feel is grounded in the Big Book. I listen to Gary K's episodes often and wondered if you could share my email or contact info with him so that maybe I could get in touch with him. I live in Michigan." Hey, I wonder if you know Kim. But anyway, are you in Macomb, Michigan? I know Michigan's a big state. It's like saying I live in Texas. Oh, do you know John? Nonetheless, he says, "I live in Michigan, so face-to-face meetings are impossible during this COVID time, but a conversation would be a great starting point. Let me know, and please let me know how much and please know how much you are doing has influenced my recovery. Thanks, Matt." Oh, thanks. You know, and as you know, Matt, I got you in touch with Mr. Gary K, and I'll let you two guys kind of take it from there. And, our people that record these episodes love to hear from the listeners. So that's absolutely fantastic. Just don't sound crazy when you write me an email, because I may read you out. Just be smart enough to sound absolutely crazy. Write an email like Matt. Trent writes in, and Trent says, "Hola, John." Well, Mr. Trent, you are familiar with the bilinguality of this world as well. Sounds like you are bilingual. Anyway, he says, "I live in the hinterlands of our massive country in a city called Sioux Falls in the southeast corner of South Dakota." Well, you know what? I know of Sioux Falls, but, and I've said this before on the podcast, within the contiguous 48, the lower 48, that is one of the two states that I have never been to, Mr. Trent. And I'm hoping to get there at some point. But anyway, he says, "I've been sober for 2 months now, and my dry date is December 1st of 2020. I first stepped into the company of AA on, I believe, December 26th of 2020. Whatever the date was when Saturn and Jupiter aligned in the night sky." He says, "I didn't really have a burning desire to go to a meeting, let alone join a fellowship in a program that would throw my life in a completely different direction. But when I climbed down the steps of the church basement that would become my home group, I knew I was in the right place as people began to share their stories. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was where I needed to be. I fit in. While listening to fellow alcoholics discuss their relationship with alcohol, I felt like I was thinking out loud. I have since got a sponsor and began to work the steps and studying the big book. It has changed my outlook on life. I found Sober Speak while combing the internet looking for additional resources on sobriety. I'm going to be completely honest with you. The first time I listened, I thought you sounded completely... I thought you sounded completely hokey. Well, Mr. Trent, I feel the same way. And you should imagine, or you can only imagine how the lovely Mrs. M and my children feel about hearing this type of nonsense on a day-to-day basis. But I completely get it. He said, "But I gave the podcast a chance and I have come to implement it into my daily life. And although I still think you're a bit hokey," "I have come to love," in big capital letters, "hearing your voice and listening to your words of truth, wisdom, and vulnerability. Your guests are fantastic, and you do an incredible job at asking questions and getting the most out of them. I'd say Bill C. and Gary K. are the two that I have resonated with the most. I love how they live out the spirituality of the program. Thank you so much for your service and providing me and many other recovering alcoholics this gem of a podcast. And oh, by the way, please add me to the super secret Facebook group. My email is such and such. Keep on keeping on. Much love, Trent Yu." Well, thank you, Trent Yu, for writing that in. And I love it when people are truthful like that. And I know, in fact, I said earlier in the week when I had first seen this email, I said, "Hey," to the lovely Mrs. M, I said, "You know what? Somebody said that they thought I was a little bit hokey on the podcast." She said, "Well, damn right you are." But anyway, I love that word, hokey. Thank you so much, Trent. God bless you. All right, how many more? This is the last but not least here, folks. This has been a big O listener feedback. You guys are great, and I've said this before. If I didn't do this listener feedback, it would save a lot of time, on getting this podcast out every week. But I mean, this is what makes it worth it, right? I mean, this, just hearing from you guys, being part of us all being part of a community and communicating with each other and loving on each other and helping each other in recovery. I mean, this is what it's all about. So thank you so much for all the feedback that you write in with. Peter writes it. Well, in fact, when I went Peter, and then I went to Peter Pumpkin Eater, and I'm so sorry, Peter. I shouldn't be doing that. I'm sure you've heard that many times in your life. But nonetheless, Peter writes in. He says, "Good morning, John." I'm assuming he was writing this in the morning. What do you think? He says, "I grew up in the south of Boston, living in Braintree, Massachusetts, for those of you who don't know what Mass is. Braintree. I wonder where they came up with that name for a city. Who knows? But anyway, for the last 3 years, I've been here for the last 3 years with my wife. I grew up in an alcohol and drug-filled house where that was what I thought was normal. I couldn't wait to join them. I got through most of my life surrounded by enablers and people that drank like I did. Both my construction job and the rock band that I had joined included a lot of drinking and drug use. The first consequence of my drinking was getting divorced after being married 22 years, which led me to heavier drinking. A couple of years later, blacked out, I knocked a telephone pole over and got arrested for the first time. First time going to AA, I compared myself to other people's stories and felt I wasn't that bad. I tried to drink with restrictions and rules, but always drank too much. I was lucky enough to meet another good woman that I married, and not too long into the relationship, I was kicked out of the house for blacking out on a daily basis. I had to make a choice to live a life of a lonely alcoholic with no one, dying from a ruined liver, or stop drinking. I called a sober friend of mine and asked him to help me. I got back into the program and stopped comparing myself to other people and started identifying to things I could relate to. I love the idea that you don't have to take the elevator to the bottom floor. You can get off any time you like. Now, I'm back in the program. I have a sponsor. I'm working on my step 4 right now. And I get on my knees and I pray to God every morning to take away the urge to drink. And so far, it is working. My sober date is September 12th, 2020, and I feel great. I'm 51, and I have had enough alcohol for a lifetime. I want to grow old and enjoy my family and life. Life is good as long as I don't pollute it with drugs and alcohol. Well, Pete, I don't know why I said Peter. You're saying Pete. I may have got that off an email or something like that. But anyway, Pete, man, do I understand that. He says, I listen to podcasts at work all day, and I was looking for a sobriety podcast and stumbled upon yours. I love it. As you always say, a meeting between meetings. Thank you so much for your service. You were much appreciated. A gift from God, your alcoholic brother, Pete D. Well, you are a gift from God as well, Mr. Pete D. And thank you, my alcoholic brother. I sure do appreciate you. All right, everybody, that is a wrap on this here week's episode of Sober Speak. God bless you. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. As I say every week, I plan to be on back next week, but who knows? We take this a week at a time. God bless you. Love you guys.